Welcome to Let the Light In. Today we've got the 7Artisans 50mm F1.8 lens and we are reviewing it on the Sony E-mount. This is what we are filming on here today. This comes in at a price of $228, so certainly on the lower end of the spectrum. But what kind of performance are we going to get out of this lens? You gotta stick around and see. The headline features of this lens is that it is a full frame lens. It's got an STM stepping motor, and it also has a USB port for future firmware upgrades. So quite a low feature list coming in, but although we kind of expect that at a price point of $228, we're not expecting a bunch of features and gimmicks. So let's start with simply looking at this lens and the build quality. The focus ring is very heavily damped, but it rotates both smoothly and seamlessly. The aperture ring is similarly stiff in its rotation, and it is a clickless ring with no stop at all between f16 and auto mode. It has a little bit of kind of like a click and a stop, but it's not a hard stop. So you can still rotate easily past f16. There's just a little something there, but not enough to catch it every time, depending on how kind of fiercely you're cranking the aperture ring around. The aperture range goes from f1.8 to f16, and finishing off the build of this lens, it does come with a AF/MF switch on the lens body, but I feel like the switch is poorly placed and located on this lens, as well as I would say cheaply built. It's way too easy to switch it in between AF and MF modes. Now, this is something that you can, catch relatively quickly. You go half press your shutter and you realize, hey, it's not gaining focus. Why is that? It's not because it's a terrible lens. It's because I accidentally flicked the switch over to manual focus mode. And I did do this several times while using this lens. So I think, a couple of feedback items here, I think make it a more noticeable click. It's just way too kind of seamless to switch in between those modes, as well as maybe think about locating it on a different part of the lens body. Maybe it's just me who tends to place their thumb in that area on the lens body, but that's my feedback as far as the build of this lens. So very simple lens, right? Aperture ring, focus ring, and the AF/MF switch. It does come with a USB-C port on the back, but this lens does not boast any weather sealing whatsoever. Now let's talk about the actual lens's performance. So this is an autofocus lens, and focus pulling was very, very accurate, starting at wide open f1.8, going back to the back wall and bringing it back. It was very impressive in its performance. Additionally, closing it down, it picked it up. It had a great performance all throughout the aperture range. Now you can see focus breathing within this footage. You see that wall coming back in and out and in and out and zooming in and out. So there is focus breathing. It's not like super minimal. It's not super aggressive either. It's kind of just middle of the road in its performance, I would say. One more point on autofocus here is kind of a facial tracking test, and you can see it both picks up focus of my face quickly, but also maintains a good accurate pace in following my movements. So very impressive when it comes to its autofocus performance. It's also incredibly impressive when it comes to its chromatic aberrations, and more so the lack thereof that it provides. It's a very clean performance all around, very impressive. We're switching the focus from the face of the clock to back to the trees, and you can see it's very clean all throughout. So that's, there's not a whole lot to talk about when it comes to this lens, which is not a bad thing. This lens has great autofocus. It produces incredibly clean images, and its wide open aperture is going to make it a go-to lens. It's going to make it useful in a wide variety of lighting conditions. And something that we have to keep in mind when we're looking at these images, when we're looking at the autofocus performance, is that this lens costs $228 US. It's incredible, right? The performance to cost ratio that you are getting out of this lens is absolutely huge and would be very difficult for other lenses to stand up to and to compete with. Yes, this lens is missing some premium features such as weather sealing. The AF/MF switch is built really rather cheaply and, in my opinion, placed in a poor area on the lens body. But other than that, for $228, right, when we're talking about the end result, when we're talking about the video that you're using for your work, or we're talking about the photo that you're taking and hanging up on your wall, can you really complain? Okay, the damping's a little heavy, but look at the end result, because you paid $228 for this lens. So this lens is a sweet deal. Yes, there's some things that can be improved on, but overall, when we look at the end image quality, we're looking at the product that we're actually using. Overall, it's a job very well done by 7Artisans. It's very impressive. So if you are interested in buying this lens, the links can be found down below. You can follow them and then it'll take you where you need you to go. Amazon, B&H, whatever you need. And other than that, I hope you have a wonderful day. Take care and remember to let the light in.